Good evening. Welcome to the November 4th meeting of Troy City Council. Please silence your electronic devices for the duration of the meeting. We will begin the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Tom Kendall this evening. Please stand.
Dear Lord, thank you for these glorious days that you give us. Be with us, guide us, and bless those who are unable to be with us here tonight, that they know your love and your mercy. Guide us as we go into this meeting and help protect those who serve us, the police, the fire, and our soldiers and troops overseas around the world. In his name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Snee.
Here.
Mr. Swazer.
Here.
Mrs. Oda.
Here.
Mr. Tremblay.
Here.
Mr. Kendall.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Phillips.
Here.
All members are present.
Begin this evening with an introduction. Mr. Titterington, would you like to make the introduction?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ron, if you could stand. I'd like to introduce Veronica Showalter. She goes by Ronnie. Ronnie comes to us after being the tax administrator at Huber Heights for the past 3 years. Prior to that, she worked with Creative Microsystems Incorporated, or CMI. You might have heard, since we spent a lot of money with them maintaining our financial systems, where she was a team lead and a customer service specialist. Prior to that, she spent 8 years with the Village of Germantown as the deputy finance director and tax administrator. Ronnie is a member of the Dayton Area Tax Administrators Group, as well as the Southwest Ohio Tax Administrators Association. She and her husband Craig live in Englewood, and she does have a son and a daughter. So I'd like you to help me welcome Ronnie.
Welcome. Mrs. Knight, please read the minutes of the October 21st meeting of Troy City Council.
Minutes of Council, October 21, 2013. Committee reports. Law and Ordinance Committee recommends the rezoning covered by ordinance number 018-2013 not be approved. Committee recommended the rezoning covered by ordinance number 019-2013 be adopted. Safety and Health Committee recommended legislation be prepared approving 2014 funding to Miami County Health District. Resolution number R42-2013, authorizing an agreement for the Miami County Health District for health services and payment for 2014 was given first reading and adopted. Ordinance number 018-2013, a rezoning of in-lots 3501, 02, and 03 was given third reading and failed adoption. Ordinance number 019-2013, a rezoning of in-lot 10163, third reading and adopted. There was a presentation regarding the Troy-Miami County Public Library, and particularly the levy. Also a presentation by the Executive Director of the Health Partners Free Clinic. Following comments, council adjourned 7:30 p.m.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Move to accept the minutes as read.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Clark and seconded by Mr. Phillips to accept the minutes. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
These minutes are approved.
We'll have a committee report this evening from the Utilities Committee and Chairman, Mr. Doug Tremblay.
Thank you, Madam President. This committee met on October 28 to consider an intergovernmental agreement between the cities of Troy, Middletown, and Dayton. The agreement would assure Troy and Middletown of the needed supply of high-quality pebble lime from the city of Dayton to meet the water softening process, with the city of Dayton being responsible for the removal of the lime sludge residual from the lagoons at the water plant of both Troy and Middletown. For over a year, Troy has been involved in a pilot program to assure that this agreement would work. The cost to Troy will be less than the combined cost of purchasing lime from a vendor and paying a contractor to clean the lime sludge lagoons. The terms of the intergovernmental agreement have been worked out with representatives of all three communities. We believe this agreement will be beneficial to all three parties. It is the recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to enter into an intergovernmental agreement between the cities of Dayton, Troy, and Middletown related to obtaining lime from the City of Troy water treatment plant and the removal of the lime sludge residual from the lagoons, with the cost associated with such agreement not to exceed $300,000 for the first year, with such amount adjusted in subsequent years based on the terms of the agreement. Emergency legislation is supported for the purposes of finalizing the agreement and capturing the savings. Respectfully submitted by Mr. Phillips, Mr. Swazer, and myself, Doug Tremblay.
Are there any questions from council on the report? Do you have anything further, Mr. Tremblay?
Nothing further.
Okay. Law and Ordinance Committee Chairman, Mr. Schweizer, has a liquor license application
Yes,
to read.
Madam President, we do. The Ohio Division of Liquor Control has transmitted the notice of application for the stock transfer of the existing C1, C2, and D6 permits from the name of Troy Petroleum LLC, DBA Eastside Mini Mart, 1314 East Main Street, to Maruti Gasoline and Company, DBA Eastside Mini Mart, at the same address. Objections must be filed by December 2nd. The police department has advised that the city has no basis of objection to the license based on the applicant. And that's all.
Thank you. We'll move on to resolutions then. Or, I'm sorry, citizen comments. At this time, there's a 2-minute time limit. And if anyone in the audience has any questions or comments related to any of the agenda items this evening, if you would please come forward and state your name and address, and then address council. Okay. Seeing none, then we'll continue with resolutions. Mrs. Knight, please read Resolution R43, 2013.
Resolution number R43, 2013, resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to enter into an agreement with the Miami County Public Defender's Commission for 2014. Cost of the agreement not to exceed $20,341.13, which has been the amount, I think, for the last 5 years, and this meets the city's requirement to provide defense for indigents charged under local ordinance. First reading.
Are there any questions from council on the resolution?
Move for suspension. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Clark and seconded by Mr. Kendall to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead? Yes. Mr. Swazer?
Yes. Move to adopt.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Schweizer and seconded by Mr. Tremblay to adopt the resolution. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead? Yes. Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Mrs. Knight, please read Resolution R44, 2013.
Resolution number R44, 2013. Resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the cities of Dayton and Middletown related to lime purchase and lime sludge removal, and declaring an emergency. This three-party agreement would be for 5 years, cost not to exceed $300,000 to the city for the first year. This was reported on this evening, first reading.
Are there any questions from council on this resolution?
Move for suspension.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Phillips and seconded by Mr. Tremblay to suspend the rules. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead? Yes. Mr. Swazer,
Yes.
Mrs. Oda,
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay.
Yes.
Move for adoption.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Kendall and seconded by Mr. Phillips to adopt the resolution. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed,
Yes.
Mr. Swazer,
Yes.
Mrs. Oda,
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay,
Yes.
Mr. Kendall.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Moving on to ordinance, I ask Mrs. Knight to read ordinance 022, 2013.
Ordinance number 022, 2013. Ordinance vacating an unimproved public alley between West Ross Street and Southview Avenue, extending between Amelia Avenue and South Market Street in the city of Troy, Ohio. This alley vacation has been recommended by the Troy Planning Commission. There will be a public hearing at the next council meeting, so this would go on to another reading.
Thank you. That completes the business portion of tonight's meeting. Mrs. Knight, are there any communications or announcements?
No, they're not.
Mayor Beamish, do you have anything for us this evening?
Just want to mention that this morning, there was a patriotism day for our vets at Van Cleve School. It's a sixth grade building. It was a full house down there. Wonderful opportunity for young and older to get together. It just kind of leads us to Veterans Day that comes up from a week from today. And hopefully we'll all be there and the weather will cooperate and we will have a wonderful Veterans Day observance for those who have risked their lives for our freedom. And the other thing I would just mention that a lot of people have been asking about, and this is all weather permitting, but we're looking forward to having Mr. Tweed's Christmas tree heading down 55 to the downtown square and be placed on November 13th, which is a Wednesday. Usually takes place in the morning. It's a process, and Piqua Steel continues to be a great supporter of that event and helping us with that placement. So just wanted everybody to know that as it leads up to our illumination ceremony. That'll be November 29th. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Titterington, do you have any comments this evening?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Livingston, any comments this evening?
No.
Mr. Stickle?
I
Any
have no
comments?
comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any comments from council members this evening?
Madam President,
Mrs. Snee?
I'd just like to take this opportunity to send congratulations to the Troy High School Marching Band. They received a superior rating last evening for the 13th year in a row at the OMEA State Marching Band Competition, and they are one of only 4 bands in Ohio to have qualified for that event since its inception 33 years ago. So as a proud band parent, big congratulations.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Any comments or questions from staff today? Any questions from anyone in the audience? Okay, seeing none, thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. Have a safe and peace-filled week. Meeting adjourned.